Horizon Zero Dawn was a smashing success for developer Guerrilla Games. It received glowing reviews and it sold over 7.5 million copies, making it PS4's most successful new IP. And now Guerrilla Games say they want to make more games even faster.
First up in this week's news roundup, Guerrilla Games, the developer behind the PS4 exclusive Horizon Zero Dawn, said they want to make games faster and they are expanding to do it. Guerrilla recently announced they're in the middle of a massive studio expansion, which will increase the number of staff from 250 people to over 400. They're also relocating the office to make it happen. Studio head Herman Holst said Guerrilla hopes to shorten the time it takes for them to make games like Horizon, which took around 6.5 years. Holst said, quote, "We want to release games in 2 or 3 years, both new titles and games based on existing titles. Guerrilla's new office space will be used for audio and motion capture studios." More games, does that mean more Horizon? Definitely yes. Definitely yes. If anyone who's played through and there's that little Marvel post-credits thing going on with that game where it just plants the seed for something else in future, so that they've got to definitely carry on the series there. And the fact they want to make more games is probably not a surprise. I suppose it's quite frustrating to have to spend 5 or 6 years on one game and then that's out, and then you're like, okay, it's going to be another 5 years until the next one. And this is something that Corey Barlog said recently about God of War.
It's a lot of pressure, isn't it? Just on one single idea or one game, one product for a bit, if you're thinking about it in business terms, have all that pressure build over 6.5 years. And if it goes wrong, then you're absolutely screwed. And I can empathise with that. And we did cover this recently where they were taking on new personnel, and we were looking at the job descriptions to see for whether there was Horizon 2. There's no Horizon 2 guaranteed or confirmed at this point, but it would make sense. It would make no sense at all for them to drop that and leave that IP right now, because you know, the rate that they're growing and all that, it has to be a possibility. Also this week, Blizzard announced they will no longer charge people for World of Warcraft or any of its expansions prior to the upcoming Battle of Azeroth. Starting this week, WoW subscribers will get the base game and all its expansions up to now included as part of the subscription fee with no extra costs. This means if you want the complete WoW experience, then all you need is a subscription and the £40 for the Battle of Azeroth expansion. It's likely Blizzard made this move in an attempt to attract more subscribers to WoW because the numbers have been slowly trickling down for a few years now. Blizzard stopped sharing the number of active subscribers in 2015, at which point it was around 5.5 million. Back in 2014, around the release of the Warlords of Draenor expansion, the subscriber count spiked at around 10 million. But this success was short-lived and the number fell again soon after. WoW's last expansion, Legion, was a sales success, selling 3.3 million copies in a single day, but Blizzard did not disclose if this had an effect on the amount of subscribers.
So this MMO is, of course, unlike anything else in terms of scale, size, popularity. Like it's just an absolute juggernaut, a phenomenon, and the fact it's been going as long as it has is incredible. I think what Blizzard are having to do now is kind of, they've had for so long, for so many years, they've had like just millions and millions of players and all that money and all that revenue coming just from one place, and now they're having to replace that with something else because the company needs that revenue pool for its like forecasts and stuff, and if it's seen to be losing money, then the company seems to be failing. So it's got to replace that cash with other cash now, or it's got to keep World of Warcraft going as well as it can, and this is obviously one measure of doing that. It's still a lot of money, like it's still 40 quid and you still have to pay the subscription. It's just getting rid of some of the barrier, and they're obviously confident that some people are still willing to put a lot of cash down just to play World of Warcraft. In other news, the update which removes microtransactions from last year's Middle-earth Shadow of War is now live for everyone. Back in April, developer Monolith announced they would be stripping microtransactions from the open-world Middle-earth action RPG, starting with the removal of real-world currency in May. That was followed by the closure of the in-game market in July. Well, now the update is out and all the loot boxes and the microtransaction market are gone from the game for good. However, microtransactions weren't the only thing that have changed in this update. Monolith have also significantly altered the Shadow Wars portion of the game. Now, Shadow Wars is a bit of post-game content for players to dabble in once they've finished the main campaign, but at launch it was criticised for being needlessly grindy. As part of the update, Shadow Wars has been renamed to Epilogue and features additional story elements and narration from key characters within the game. Completing the Epilogue rewards players with the Masks of Nazgul, which gives them the ability to summon monsters and undead in battle. Monolith have also boosted the game's level cap up to 80 and the enemy level cap to 85, but experience points have been tweaked to reflect these changes. Rounding out the changes are more legendary orcs for players to encounter, a new gift system for followers, new prestige skills, and some new skins.
This takes away a huge barrier for me when it came to the game launch, and I didn't want to get involved in all this nonsense, like artificially adding grind in the game just to make loot boxes more, more appealing, so that you can work your way through the game a little bit faster by, getting orcs and stuff or getting them out of loot boxes. The fact that they've changed it, I think, for me personally, it's too late. I won't go back to this game. I won't even look at it. However, this does tidy up this game. It's another domino that falls in the whole loot box story. The fact that they're taking them out is great. I mean, don't get me wrong. That is a great thing that they've done, and for the fans of the game who didn't like the loot boxes, it's great for them. They don't have to deal with that bullshit anymore. And anyone who was on the edge of maybe trying it but was put off by loot boxes, they can jump in again now. For me personally, like I said, it's just too late.
Importantly, it shows that loot boxes in certain games are just not popular and they don't work, and because they're having to revert to what the game probably would have been without all that loot box bollocks, because no one's buying into it.
In Fallout related news, Todd Howard said Bethesda is less likely to let external development studios make Fallout games again in future. Speaking to The Guardian, Howard said while Bethesda aren't strictly against letting outside teams work on a Fallout, it's unlikely to happen again. Here's what he had to say. Quote, "I wouldn't say never, but now that our company is so big, it's always better to keep stuff internal. It becomes less likely, but I could never say never." This news might disappoint fans of 2010's Fallout New Vegas, which was developed by the legendary Obsidian Entertainment, who said they would like to make another Fallout someday. But Howard did have some praise for Obsidian, saying, quote, "I thought the Obsidian guys did a fabulous job."
Now, it is also possible that Bethesda might not want to work with external developers because of the ongoing lawsuit against Warner Brothers Entertainment. Not too long ago, Bethesda alleged that Warner Brothers had ripped off code from Fallout Shelter to use in their game, Westworld, on the mobile. Both games were developed by the studio Behaviour Interactive, and Bethesda alleged there was a bug in the Westworld game which was identical to one found in Fallout Shelter. Warner Brothers denied the allegations and said Behaviour Interactive have assured them that they didn't use any of Bethesda's code in Westworld. As for the future of the Fallout series, the upcoming Fallout 76 is being co-developed by Bethesda Game Studios Austin, who were formerly known as Battlecry Studios. And back in 2015, Bethesda opened another studio in Montreal, Canada, which they said would help expand its development capabilities. So they've just grown into a company that can develop multiple games at the same time, is the basic gist of it. However, I am a bit sad about this because Fallout New Vegas was very, 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 very good. And Obsidian made that.
Yeah, and maybe this is one way to try and avoid people comparing the new Fallout games to one of their favourites, which might be because it's like, oh no, it's Bethesda Game Studios again. It's not the boys at Obsidian or whatever. I don't know. It's a good decision because it stops people from stealing your code. And in Star Citizen news, a backer who put around $4,500 of his money into Robert Space Industries' giant sci-fi thing sued the company for his money back, and he lost. Ken Lord, a data scientist from Colorado, took Roberts Space Industries to court because he wanted a refund for the cash he'd put into Star Citizen in crowdfunding, and the company, well, they just didn't get back to him. Quick reminder, Star Citizen has so far raised over $190 million in crowdfunding. He lost that court case since RSI had, as Lord had failed to realise, changed its terms of service so that no refunds would be given more than 14 days after payment. Lord, who pledged a total of 61 times, had paid his $4,500 into the game before the terms of service were changed, but that made no difference to this case. His specific complaint was how the game's scope changed from the Wing Commander inspired experience he initially backed into something completely different. The main issue was the addition of the first-person shooter elements. As someone with multiple sclerosis and someone who suffers from tremors, that just wasn't something he could take part in. And as for the game's Squadron 42 main story portion, they got rid of multiplayer co-op. Quote, "So they added something I can't do, but got rid of the part where at least I could have friends to carry me."
Now, Lord also criticised the rate of development, pointing out nearly 6 years in and they still haven't completed a single star system, despite promising 100 of them as a stretch goal. RSI told Kotaku that the company will refund anyone who has second thoughts for up to 30 days after their pledge, and outside that window they will still consider refund requests for exceptional cases. Quote, "But generally, at that point, the funds need to be considered available for development. This policy is actually very generous when compared to nearly any other gaming company. Most publishers would not allow any refund at all after players have downloaded and played for several hours."
Most publishers wouldn't change the scope of their game consistently and change the terms of service after someone spent $4,500.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a buyer beware thing for me. I feel like it's such a unique case. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Star Citizen is so unique. We've not seen anything like it. $190 million in funding. Do they really really need to pull this kind of shit? Just make the guy happy, just pay him his money back. That's the bottom line. But I guess that sets a kind of difficult precedent for them. But I mean, for my money, I think that it's dodgy is what this is, and the fact that they can change the terms of service and get away with that shit after the effect, and continue to change the game as they go along, and the scope of the game as they go along as well, I find that really troublesome, I'll be honest.
This guy was a massive fan of the original pitch and the original, idea and concept. He was a really big fan of the kind of Wing Commander type games from back in the day, so he just wanted a bit more of that. And then the game is literally morphed into not a multiplayer game but an MMO, and then there's a story mode where it's like all about first person shooting and stuff. So he has seen what this initial campaign was, completely transformed in his eyes to something that he physically cannot play. And that person who's kind of in that position, then before a game comes out, he's kind of backing it, but he's also buying into it. He's playing a little portion of it. He's just taking part in the community. He's pouring cash into this thing. After all that, he kind of has a complete, he's lost faith in it, and he's decided, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be at all. I would like my money back, please. And that's where I have much problem with it, is the fact that he has had to go to court rather than have a proper conversation with them about this, because he asked for a refund. They did reply, and there was a conversation, but then they said, well, we're going to refer you to a specialist because this is a specialist case, and that just never happened. So he's had to ask them in forum threads, and then he was ignored again, and then he's had to resort to this. It's not something that he just wanted to do. So that's my biggest problem with it, and I don't know where he goes from here, really. It's just a bad news story for him, I guess. Yeah, and I think that this story is a bad news story for Star Citizen as well on RSI, because anyone who looks at it from the outside thinks will notice that this isn't right. There's something wrong here for a guy to spend all that money on a game, being promised one thing, and when they changed that afterwards, haven't changed the terms of service. I think that whole thing is bad for publicity, and it would be a lot better for RSI to just say, well, here's the money, and we're sorry. Any of you guys excited for a new Horizon, or any comments on any of the news stories that we had today? Let us know down in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new around here, check out more of our content on your screen there. Support us on Patreon using that link. We'll see you again in the next video. Until then, bye for now.